really keep it quite simple. I grew up in the country, grew up on the ranch, and I like woods and stuff. So most of the time, that's where I like to be. And so that's where the photographs happen. I do like anything that has sort of an aesthetic to it. I don't like brand new buildings. I like old ones. To me, they're the 5 R's of photographic expression are the 5 R's of photographic intuition or art, whatever you want to call it, is rust, rot, ruin, rubble, and ramshackle. And I find all of those aesthetic, and I look for chunks of those wherever I go. I like buildings that have patina of age and character. I like old tools, and I guess I'm a traditionalist. But but anything that I see that rings my chime, however that resonate with me somehow, that's what I photograph. And so I like some buildings, and I like a little this, a little that, but I don't really have any shtick. I don't have any specific category that I photograph only, because I really am not trying to make a living at this. I'm just simply, this is my personal art, and so I don't have any agenda with it. I don't even have an economic agenda, much to the chagrin of my wife. But I simply have allowed myself to follow my nose. I tried making a living at it many years ago. I tried 2 or 3 different ways of making a living with photography, and I didn't like any of them. You would think that I would like the fine art part of it. I hated that just as much as I did anything else. I found that after about 2 years working with art galleries, that I pretty much had it with art galleries. And I got to the point where I was simply reprinting the negatives that were selling, the photographs that were selling, and I was just reprinting those. I didn't have time to do anything else. And the galleries would say, well, Gordon, these pictures are selling very well. Why don't you go take more of these? Oh my God. And pretty soon they slowly work into your mind, you know. They get a hold of your soul that way, you know, because it's money. It's money to them. I don't blame them. They've got to pay the rent and all that business. Running a gallery is a tough business. But it was creative death for me. And after a couple of years, I said, I can't take this. I'd rather swamp out a bar than do this. So I dropped out of all photographic, trying to make a living at it at all. And as far as the commercial part of it, some of those things would last a couple of days, and I decided I don't want to do this anymore. Go to freelancing, like going to the opening of a subdivision or something and photographing that. Oh man. Almost anything's better than that. Every once in a while, I get called upon to make a speech or talk to a group of professional photographers. And these are usually, well, there's one right where I live, Sacramento Valley Association of Professional Photographers, something like that. These are the baby and wedding portrait photographers, freelancers, the bread and butter of photography in most cities. So here's, I assemble, and they come in, sit down, and there's maybe 30 or 40 of them or something like that. And I look out across this group, and it's like this energy void. I've never seen a group more burnt out, tired, worn out, shocks of people in my life as these photographers that have been in the business about 20 years. They just have to bring in that business one way or the other. They don't take pictures on their own anymore. They don't do it. Maybe 1 in 100 does it. They would have been better off if they'd worked in a gas station or something, or sold shoes or whatever, and used it as a hobby. So I see nothing wrong with using photography as an amateur. In fact, I like to consider myself an amateur, because that leaves me free to do anything I want. And remember, amateur comes from the French word amour, to love. You love what you're doing. Morley Bear and I used to go round and round and round, because he was a firm believer in that you had to be in it professionally if you're going to be a real photographer. And I said, well, Moore, I guess I'm never going to be a real photographer then. Then he'd get even madder at me, you know? Because I'd cut him off, you know. He didn't like that. But he was one person. He had an iron will, and regardless of the assignment, he carved out time for his own photography, and he did it right up to the day he died. So he had an absolute iron will. He forced the world to make room for his photography. If he was going to go someplace he was an architectural photographer, and if he was going to fly someplace from where he lived, Carmel, to wherever, Philadelphia, it doesn't matter, he would take as many as a dozen big cases, and they would fly those cases. And the client would pay for this, and the client would pay for 2 or 3 extra days of his time. Nice if you're a world-famous photographer, you know, that helps. But he insisted on that and just forced the world. He always was taking his own personal photographs, no matter what. But that's a very rare circumstance. There aren't very many Morley bears in the world that were able to force the world to their bidding, to carve it around to fit their needs. Most of the time, most professionals are on a dead run from one assignment to another trying to make ends meet. And he didn't do that. And he's one of the very few photographers that I know of that was able to do that his whole lifetime. Most of them don't. They just didn't. Even Ansel gave up taking a lot of pictures for 10, 15 years at a time. Ansel's most productive time was when he was doing those photographs for the park department, for the Department of the Interior. And after that, it tapered off a lot. It tapered off dramatically. Edward Weston continued right on because he made so little money at it that he continued on with his photography up until his Parkinson's disease got the better of him. Imogene was taking pictures clear into her 90s. She was amazing, amazing lady. I think Ruth is still alive, but she's very frail. I think she's way up in her 90s. She's not taking pictures. But she took them up until she was in her 70s. But she had 2 new hips and 2 new knees, and boy, I tell you, they have worked on Ruth Bernhard, and it got to where she could barely walk. She needed help, you know, so she couldn't photograph very well. But there are a few that have taken photographs a long time. I've been at it now about 50 years, and I'm actually more excited about my photography now than I've ever been in the past. Which surprises me. I'm amazed at it, actually. I thought, I better be careful, I might burn out here, but it hasn't done that, because I seem to have found a path through this bramble that suits me. It may be completely not in my best interest, it may be completely haywire, if you look at it from an economic perspective or anything else, but it's a path that seems to work for me, and so I'll probably continue on with it and just grumble about websites and things like that. Because I'm very leery. I'm almost afraid of getting too much attention. I'm afraid of it, actually, that it will take me away from what I really like to do. Frances, when she was at Morley's deathbed, talking to Morley just hours before he died, she said, "Morley, is there anything I can do for you? Anything that I can do?" And he says, "Yeah, fix it so I can get in my van and drive down the coast and take some pictures." So hours before he died, that was what he was thinking. Yeah. Brett Weston is an interesting one in that Brett was always making new pictures for no reason other than himself. He felt an urge to always be making a new photograph. It was like a new photograph meant life to him, that he had to do it in order to stay alive, that he just had that urgency always his whole life to take new photographs. That's why he was so prodigious with his photography. And he essentially shoved everything aside. Family, whatever, to go take those photographs. He felt just this urge always to take photographs. I feel a little bit of an urge like that. I always feel like, gosh, I've only got a few years left. I've got to go get photographs, you know. I don't want to get entangled with a lot of money stuff because it's going to interfere with my time to take photographs. And I feel that just now I kind of know what I'm doing, you know, after 50 years of this. So that's kind of where I am now. And I hope the old van and the joints will keep going here for as long as possible. One of the things that you need to train yourself is to travel without expectations. Expectations are the biggest killer of creative thought ever, because it puts a clamp on your mind. You're going to some place. You're going to a ghost town, for example, like Bodie, classic example. Well, you've seen pictures of ghost towns in your mind, so you've got this fixed in your mind. This is what a ghost town should look like. So you drive there and you're not thinking about anything except the ghost town, the ghost town, the ghost town, and you probably missed 1,000 pictures between your house and Bodie. And you arrive at Bodie and, oh, it's overcast, or the light's wrong. It's all screwed up. So the expectations, there you are, and it doesn't meet those expectations. Now what? And you're kind of very disappointed. Oh, gee whiz, now what? So you have to reinvent those expectations. And that's very, very difficult. It's also very unrewarding kind of work. So go without expectations. So one of the hardest things in photography or being a visual artist is to go without expectations. And it took me a long time to do that, but eventually I get in my car and I start driving around. If I don't see any photographs, I don't even notice it, that I haven't seen any photographs that I want to stop for. It's okay to do that. And you have to let that be okay. We're our own worst enemy in many ways. And expectations about anything, you can only really be free of that and let that intuition, let that pattern of recognition, that flame of recognition occur when there's no expectations. Even if you have photographed something many times, go without expectations, because you will see it differently if if those expectations are gone. You know, people gather up little pieces of driftwood or something and scatter them about the house. And I'll take the rock and I'll turn it this way and I'll turn it over and I'll try to get to know that rock. Those are little reminders along the way to keep that mind fresh without expectations. It's tough not to have those, especially if you're working full time. You really do have just a few hours on the weekend. Well, then you really want to bring back some photographs. It's like going fishing. You've got to bring that fish back, you know. You have to bring back that trophy to make it worthwhile, which is another enemy that we have. And boy, there's a lot of them. In our society, for some peculiar reason, things have to be justifiable. You can't, once you're an adult, you can't do things just for fun anymore. I have friends all the time that, oh, they want to buy a new camera, but they'll have to sell pictures. They'll have to do something to justify that camera. And I say, the hell with it. Just go buy it.